More footage has been released of Donald Trump's disastrous interview with MAGA Fox News host Sean Hannity, in which at various points he rants about former President Joe Biden, and then Trump and Hannity have some sort of strange cope therapy session together about Trump's disastrous interview on ABC, where he was humiliated in front of the world. The whole thing is very strange and very unpresidential. That's classic Trump. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, let's start with this clip here in which Trump and Hannity have that cope session about Trump's humiliation at the hands of ABC interviewer Terry Moran and, quite frankly, Trump himself over the MS-13 situation. You remember that?
Stefan, I call him George Slopadopoulos, the George Slopadopoulos show on ABC. ABC's really bad.
I call him Little Georgie, so we both have our own little nickname.
No, but he's a bad guy. But he's a bad guy. We had to pay me $16 million, so that's good.
My favorite was the interview with the guy. You didn't pick David Muir or Stephanopoulos. I don't even know who you are.
I had no idea.
I don't know if the media knows how to deal with all the access they finally have, which they haven't had in a long time.
I had no idea who he was, but he got a little nasty, so I explained that I just don't know who you are. Who are you? They actually gave me a choice of anybody at ABC, and I picked this guy, Moran, because I never heard of him. So I said, let's use him because the others
reason to pick him.
Okay, so again, a cope session. Now, you guys may or may not remember this particular interview as one of the most humiliating things Trump has ever done to himself. This ABC News interview about the tattooed knuckles of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Just as a refresher, here's that exchange that Trump and Hannity are trying to cope about.
He wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
well,
over that.
Wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped. So let me
That was Photoshopped. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. I picked you, Terry. But you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture. We'll
and you think it was Photoshop? Well,
here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir.
Terry,
I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go on. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
Oh, they weren't there, but they're there now, right?
No,
but they're there
in
now.
your picture.
Terry.
Ukraine, sir.
He's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
All right. We'll take a look at
that. You remember that? It was proof of Donald Trump's absolute cognitive decline. President Biden has never been that bad. This is the photo in question. It was Trump holding up a picture of Kilmar Abrego Garcia's knuckles, and his staff in either Arial or Times New Roman font superimposed with Photoshop the letter M, the letter S, the number 1, and the number 3. Those are not actually on Kilmar Abrego Garcia's knuckles, but Trump assumed stupidly that they were. He fell for it. He was humiliated on the world stage, and thus Hannity and Trump dedicate a considerable amount of time to coping. You really got the best of him, sir. Yeah, you said you had no idea who he was. Okay, we all know who lost that exchange, and it was obviously Trump. But with that in mind, let's go to some other clips.
Horrible that is. Anyway, but that's going to be a thing of the past.
Some of them are they're cancer drugs too sometimes.
Yeah, everything. It's very unfair. Very unfair to people. They have cancer, they don't have much money, they have enough money to get through this, but then they end up going bankrupt. You know, people were getting themselves fixed up or not getting fixed up. Either way, and still they were going bankrupt all over the place because they couldn't afford the drugs. But if they lived in a different country, they would have paid just a fraction. Think of how horrible that is. Anyway, so I fixed that. Nobody thought it was fixable, and I fixed it.
Donald Trump, yeah, I fixed medical bankruptcy. I totally solved it. Total bullshit, not true whatsoever. But he can't help but just pathologically lie because he knows Hannity's not going to fact check him. Here's another clip.
Democratic Party. Look at the leadership that's emerged. Jasmine Crockett, AOC, the Squad, Grandpa Bernie. They seem to be the most.
Well, look at Schumer. He turned out to be a Palestinian. I knew him right at the beginning. And I tell you what, Schumer's turned out, we call him the Palestinian senator, the senator from Palestine. No, Chuck Schumer is very disappointed.
Is he afraid of Democratic?
He's a senator from Palestine. I mean Palestine. Oh, Jesus. So Chuck Schumer is the highest ranking, I'm pretty sure as the former Senate Majority Leader, now Senate Minority Leader, the highest ranking Jew in the American government. So Trump is being anti-Semitic here by not recognizing that, and instead trying to insult him by referring to like Palestinians as a pejorative. So it's bigoted in that respect. He's like 2 for 2 here, and he's fucking up the word spectacularly anyway. So he's revealing himself to be a colossal idiot. Really weird stuff. But here's another clip.
I do suffer from Trump derangement syndrome at a high level, and I guess I'm honored by that. But I'll say this, look, we had an election. You were so wonderful to me. You were really an amazing professional. You did it for the right reason. You didn't do it for the wrong reason, but you were so professional, and do suffer.
So, yeah, you know what, Sean? You were great, Sean, kissing my ass throughout that campaign. Just like, I mean, just like shoulder deep in my rectum, Sean. Like that was just like, every time you spoke, Sean, I felt an echo in my chest and stomach. But you did it for professional reasons, Sean. Congratulate yourself. Pathetic. But again, what's interesting is he's praising Hannity, who's on Fox News, and then every other day Trump bitches about Fox News because he thinks that the non-Hannity aspects are insufficiently loyal. They had to pay $800 million to settle a defamation settlement, the biggest in American history, because they signal boosted Trump's lies about the 2020 election. That's how loyal Fox is. Trump doesn't care.
Pharmaceuticals, they're going to manufacture back in this country. That was just the threat of tariffs. Now the deals are beginning to follow.
So we're here for really 2 months because it's 3.5. But you got to give me a month to get ready. You know, make the Oval Office a little more beautiful and things like that we're doing, right? But so we're really here. Let's say actively for 2 months. So in 2 months we have probably over $10 trillion committed. $10 trillion.
He's just making shit up. You know, oh my God. You know, in 2 months, I've managed to secure $10 trillion, $40 gazillion in 2 months. Yeah, I've technically been here for 4.5 months, but you got to give me 2 months to decorate the Oval Office. I mean, dude just told on himself. Dude just admitted. He just admitted that he wasn't working for the American people for the first 2.5 months. He was more focused on making the White House, the Oval Office, as gauche and garish as possible, making it look like a, developing nation dictatorship. It just that it's amazing some of the shit that leaves his mouth because there's no filter between brain and mouth. He just lies impulsively and also tells on himself in the worst possible way. Like, yeah, for first month and a half, I was really focused on the Sudoku and, the New York Times crossword and, adding as much gold as possible to the Oval Office. But then, after the first 6 to 8 weeks, I decided to get to work for the American people. And in that time, $40 trillion has been brought in because of me. Again, total bullshit, but it's amazing. Here's another clip.
Entire presidency. And if you look at this poor soul, this lost soul from the last presidency, and I say that because he was a very mean person. They went after our people, including me, but he was a very mean person. He was not a smart person. In fact, if you go back 30 years ago, he wasn't a smart person. You go back to prime time with him, he wasn't a smart person, but he was a very mean person. Joe Biden's a very mean person. People don't understand that. They've ruined lives, they've ruined families, they've ruined so many people. They could have ruined me. They tried to ruin me. But we're now in Air Force One, flying nicely to the Middle East, right? But they tried to ruin me. But some people weren't able to fight back. Their families have been destroyed. And
like who? And again, imagine being Donald Trump, the most openly cruel and indecorous politician in the history of the United States, and you're complaining about Joe Biden's meanness. So strange, so strange. Trump was pursued because he broke the law President Biden, there's no evidence that Biden directed his Department of Justice to target Trump or any Republican. Unlike Trump, who is personally signing executive orders and making public statements calling for the investigation and prosecution of his political opponents, the media, and law firms. I mean, it's totally stark difference. Every accusation is a projection. There's a confession from Donald Trump, and he does project more than a movie theater. One last clip.
And no, I saw what they were doing. I felt I had to run. If I didn't run, I really believe if I didn't win this election, this country would be finished. I don't think it would have had a chance of surviving. You would have had the most radical lunatics. You would have had people rioting. It would have been this would have been the experiment of, they call it the Great Experiment. The Great Experiment would have ended very badly.
Weird, creepy, and cult. Listen, I'm the Messiah, and if I had not been elected, the American democracy would have ended. Even though Donald Trump is, again, the most openly authoritarian and anti-democratic president in the history of this country. Again, every accusation is a confession. He's basically like, okay, what am I doing? I'm just going to change the name. I'm going to slap Biden's name on it, Kamala Harris's name on it, the Democrats' name on it, and just vomit it out. And I'm going to mama bird it to Sean Hannity of Fox News. Open wide, Sean, and he's just going to swallow it wholesale because that's what he does. That's absolutely what he does. It's really pathetic. And yeah, so again, a disastrous interview by Donald Trump on Air Force One by MAGA Fox host Sean Hannity, just further demonstrating his hypocrisy, his lies, his deceit, his inability to understand things. I mean, we're watching this man corrode in real time. And again, people want to talk about Joe Biden. Hold Donald Trump to the same standard. I think you should have high standards for the president of the United States. And Donald Trump is a dangerous combination of stupid, declining, and authoritarian. And he's got, 3.5 years left? It's pretty scary. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.